Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart. And this video I wanted to talk a little bit about being a parent in wargaming when you have two young children that are eager to get started. Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Baron of Dice, premium wargaming dice. Over 500 styles, over 4,000 customer reviews. Welcome to the best dice on the planet. I actually made a video about this subject back in September 2021, I think. It's definitely a couple of years ago. My eldest, who's 9 now, 10 this year, was only 7 at the time, and it was based around the Imperium magazine at the time, the Part Works, buying the first few issues of those and teaching him at the time to play, I think was 9th edition of Warhammer 40k. And at that time I didn't play 40k at all. I'd played some Horus Heresy in the past and I loved the lore, I loved the universe, but nowhere near the game. I was playing lots of Middle Earth gaming and things like that. And my son had seen me paint a lot, do painting as a day job, as a commissioned painter. And I think I said something very similar in the intro to that video. And he enjoyed it at the time, but it was probably a little bit too much too soon for him. So that's probably the first lesson really, is that I know as geek parents, when your children show some interest in gaming, is trying to get them interested, but don't be too concerned when they're excited for a couple of days and then they're not interested the week after that. That's very, very normal and natural. And I'm sure will be my experience ongoing in all of the gaming projects I have with them coming up soon and into the near future. And one of the biggest changes since last time is that I have two sons that are now interested in toy soldiers. So Jacob is my eldest, he's 9 years old, he's 10 in November, and really likes everything nerdy, and we sit and watch Star Wars together. We've played quite a few games. Those of you that follow the channel on a regular basis will know that I've played some 6th edition of Warhammer Fantasy with him in this last year, or in 2023 really, building up towards the launch of Warhammer the Old World, and we have played Warhammer the Old World this year as well. We've had a couple of games. He's got a 2,000 point Orc and Goblin army with hardly anything painted. It's going to take him years, but he does like to play. As long as I'm there to talk him through the turn sequences, tell him which dice to roll and things, he is able to make decisions on the tabletop, and it's some brilliant father and son time. I get to play a little bit of wargaming. It's half against myself, but it is good fun. Now, my youngest, Harry, is 5. And he's always been interested in my toy soldiers as well, but he's not so much of a gamer, as you can imagine for his age. We all take part in family board games evenings, we play lots of games, but again, he's not brilliant with the rules or not winning or even liking the dice rolls when they're not good. So he likes to kind of cheat his way to victory in the way that very young children do. So it's always going to be a bit of a challenge, but he's constantly asking me for miniatures to paint, and he loves painting. And for his 5th birthday, we bought him a little painting station, and he's been busy chipping away at many of the miniatures that he's got. Now, the driving force for this video is probably being Harry. I was already gaming with Jacob and he was enjoying fantasy, even though I knew it was probably too hard for him to go away and read a rule book or even understand the rules by himself. Looking at army lists printed out was a little bit tricky, but I was able to point out the stats and things to him. Harry was just loving painting so much, and he kept asking, can I play games? Can I play games? And while he'd painted up a few spare high elves and things that I had, I knew that we weren't going to be able to work out a simplified way for him to play Warhammer the Old World. It wasn't going to work. Now, the first plan was going to be Kill Team. I kind of figured that it's a skirmish game, not many miniatures, perfect for a small child. If I do a really simplified version of the game, watched quite a few videos, did a little bit of research into it, and the game looks pretty good. Something I'd definitely like to try myself. But when it came down to getting things ready for Harry to play and thinking about what he could follow, I started to think this game isn't going to work stripped down. It's going to be a little bit boring and he won't be very engaged in it. But what I could do was get them painting. When I read some rules and played around, and they were both having a whale of the time painting their miniatures, and I decided to go for the intercession squads. So they both had 6 Space Marines. Not only are they incredibly cheap and easy to get hold of on eBay,
They're easy enough to paint as well. I think that both of them only had one man with a bare head, so it's incredibly simple. Harry chose Ultramarines because of the artwork in the 40k rulebook, and he's very, very excited for those. Jacob has chosen Raven Guard because, well, they're black and he could do a little bit of dry brushing and they were practically done. He's very much a gamer before a painter, unlike me, but Harry absolutely loves his painting, and he really wanted to go hard and do all the gold trim on his Ultramarines. So I knew I had to find a way to get them working on the tabletop, even if I made up some rules myself. And here they are with their little kill teams ready. So Jacob with his Raven Guard there, and Harry with his Ultramarines. He did an absolutely fantastic job painting them. He enjoyed the Brian Ansell-esque pictures. So I sat there with my kill team and my 10th edition core book side by side. I wondered if there was another option. Now, if you're a regular viewer of the channel or a subscriber, you may have noticed a couple of Astra Militarum painting tutorials recently, a Commissar, a Rogaldorn tank, and in those I mentioned that I was working on a bit of a painting project really for an Imperial Guard, Astra Militarum force, just 1,000 points, painting some of the new miniatures that I really, really like. But because I don't play 40k, I didn't really have any reason to do so. And I still wasn't really sure whether they'd ever hit the tabletop for a game, really. It was very much just for a fun painting thing. But as I had the 10th edition rulebook just to flick through, I do like to own these things. It got me thinking about maybe I could just really, really simplify the 10th edition rules and not worry about kill team at all. And that is essentially what we did. We set up the board for kill team, but we played 40k. I printed off a stat card from 40k for the basic Space Marine Intercessor squad. It's got all of the dice rolls and things that they needed. So Harry, I told him what he needed to roll, and Jacob was able to read it and follow it himself. It's simplified these days. It just tells you what you need to roll in most cases, apart from your wounds table. So all you need is your little chart, a wound table, and someone with enough wargaming experience like myself to make the game work. So you can see them deploying their miniatures, and it's just nice and small, fits on our kitchen table, rather than going up to my gaming room where Harry would barely be able to reach the center of the table. I think that was Harry winning the roll off the first turn. They all moved 6, so he's able to use the kill team movement tools there, which again simplifies it rather than using unwieldy tape measures and things like that. And the boys just absolutely loved it. And we just used each individual miniature as a unit. So they did alternating turns, one miniature at a time, did all the actions for that miniature, shot, whatever. So you followed the same turn sequence as you would with Warhammer 40k, but just per miniature rather than by squad. And it works really, really well. And it was just a far simpler way to go about it rather than trying to learn the kill team rules. And the boys had pretty good stamina. I had a thought that it might just last about 20 minutes or so and they'd get bored, but they were really, really excited and really enthused to play. Harry, as much as he doesn't look super happy with his hand on his face there, that's because I think he just lost one of his miniatures to a lucky shot by Jacob. But they really enjoyed it, asked to play again and again. And then when Harry did get bored, which of course you expect a 5-year-old to do, I played a couple of games with Jacob myself, and he absolutely adored it, enjoyed it far more, it's sad to say, than he did with Warhammer the Old World, and that's to be expected. You know, this is a game that he can get involved in more. He doesn't feel like he needs me there to tell him what to do or to talk about the probabilities of making this charge or that charge. He's able to get stuck in. He's got a relatively small amount of miniatures to control, and it's a far easier thing for young people to learn. And if I think back to when I first started wargaming, I was a little bit older than Jacob. I was probably 11 or 12 when I first picked up my first games of Warhammer, and even then I couldn't work out the rules properly. He's only 9 and he's only really exposed to it because it's around the house, because it's my job making content, painting armies for other people, and he's been to Warhammer World God knows how many times. So he's super excited. He's the most engaged and pumped that he's ever been for wargaming and playing games, and that is Warhammer 40k rather than the Warhammer Fantasy or the Old World, which I prefer probably, but I do love 40k as well. So this has given me a bit of a chance to dip my toes back into a universe I love and paint a few miniatures for it, and actually maybe play some games with my Astra Militarum / Imperial Guard. By the middle of the second game, Jacob was pretty much able to run the game by himself for him and Harry. He was remembering the rolls you needed. He was remembering which dice rolls for hits and for wounds, how many dice you needed to roll for particular weapons. I think there was only one different weapon anyway. They both had a marine with a chainsword, but they learnt the charge move and the number of attacks you have after that. It was just a really, really simple introduction to Warhammer 40k, and it just went very, very well. Jacob's enthusiasm for playing more and expanding more into this is because he could be involved himself, able to read rules himself and get his head around the game himself, which makes a lot of sense. Like I said earlier on, I was a lot older when I first started wargaming, and even then I struggled. So that feeling of independence, understanding of the game is quite liberating, and he's definitely fiercely independent at the moment, and it was really, really nice to see them both enjoying themselves so much. But the only thing that was a disappointment for Jacob was he wasn't really excited by the Space Marines at all. He appreciated why we started with Space Marines on each side, because they were exactly the same to make it even and fair for both of them, especially in the eyes of my youngest Harry. But he's just not enthused by Space Marines at all. But he is by Tau, apparently, and he now has a Tau combat patrol, and we've already started working on getting that painted for him, ready to go up with our combat patrols to Warhammer World later in the year around the time of his birthday, and hire a table there and get some games in. So he is super, super excited about Warhammer 40k and his Tau at the moment. I'm even reading him Shadow Sun by Phil Kelly at the moment. So he's super, super engaged with it, which is just brilliant. And that's, as a wargaming dad, is just the best thing you can see, is your kids excited about carrying that on. And that's it, really. Not a huge amount of takeaway here. I'm not going to preach to you all about what to do to get your children into wargaming. All you've got to do is be positive about your hobbies and interests, and if they follow suit, then fantastic. If they don't and they have their own things and their own journeys to go on, then equally fantastic as well. We do all love playing games as a family. We love a games night when we sit there and have snacks, have pizzas and things, and play board games and go on to quite late in the evening sometimes, and it's absolutely fantastic. And I always dream of the days that maybe my boys will do that with miniature games with me, and they're definitely showing interest, and each time we develop this a little bit more, the interest grows further. And at the moment, Jacob definitely seems like he's had a good couple of years with it, talks to me about Warhammer the Old World, and definitely seems more enthused with 40k. And for a lad of his age, I can completely understand that, and at least the accessibility of the game. And I'm not saying that game is simple, and I know there are always comments when you talk about 40k and Age of Sigmar and people say kids game and all that stuff. I don't buy any of that, and that's not what I'm trying to say here. But it's definitely a more modern set of rules, and in its most basic form is easier to get your head around, and the stats are easier to get your head around. There's less charts and that kind of stuff. The complexity when you add all the special rules and all the other stuff is completely different, and we're not doing any of that yet, so you can really play the game in its most basic form. The next stage will be to move away from that skirmish, one model, one activation, etc, etc, and moving towards that combat patrol with myself and Jacob. But when Harry wants to play a game, we can crack open that small kill team size board. He can play for half an hour, play a little game with his 6 Space Marines, and great. And then he'll go off and do what he wants to do, watch some telly, play with his toys or whatever, and Jacob and I can maybe start to slowly upscale our war games, and at least that's my hope. Now, I could make another video like this in a year's time, and it might be about another game system that I'm trying to see whether the boys engage with it and build from there. Or Jacob could end up with 2,000 points of Tau and has fully painted his Orcs and Goblin army for the Old World. Who knows? I think the only lesson, the only thing I would share with anyone who's a parent that's looking to get their children involved is just don't have any goals for it other than them enjoying themselves and you enjoying yourself. Try not to put too much money into it. I was cautious about not going out and buying Jacob too many models, lots of eBay prices, or looking for bargains. The Combat Patrol Tau was a little bit of an investment, but he's had a very good year at school and it was a bit of a treat for him. So it could well turn out to be a waste of money, but if he paints that army and plays a few games with me with it and enjoys taking it to Warhammer World, then I think it is money well invested. Harry, I'm much more cautious, and it's eBay bargains, finding him a few things here and there that I can strip and allow him to paint and see how he goes. So it's about being sensible, not over investing in the hope that you've got this gaming buddy. That's not what I'm trying to do with it at all. They are my children, they're my boys, and I love them to bits. But I will get the most enjoyment out of them being engaged and happy about whatever they do as hobbies. And if it happens to be a hobby that I share, then that's fantastic. But I'm definitely not putting any pressure on them or having any expectations of them suddenly being my gaming buddies. But good luck to any of you parents out there who are enjoying hobby time with your children and hoping that they will follow in your footsteps to a certain extent and can share some time with you, mostly because it's a great way of spending time as a family, all doing something together that you enjoy. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you soon.